Welcome fellow painters and decorators of the interweb. This is Phil Beckwith, back with another, well, we're testing the paints out from H&G, which is Hanford and Green. Now, you've probably seen some previous videos a number of weeks ago, and I did say I'd be coming back with some more of these tester pots that I've been given, or say been supplied. Now, this one, it's white again because we like a white paint to try out. This is Touch-Gard. This is a contender to be pitched against Aqua Guard. Now, you know my thoughts on Aqua Guard. Yes, it's not a bad paint. It does what it says on the tin, but I find it not very difficult. I don't find it an easy paint to apply when it comes to leaving it 10 minutes and there's a few runs on it. So that I'm putting down. It's not a paint I want to be using if I can help it. Of course I can apply it, but I think a lot of people use a roller with it, and that's why they get away with not getting the runs, particularly on a door like this. But no, H&G do a paint that I would say is probably comparable. Now you're going to say, what do you mean comparable? This is a water-based paint. It's a satiny finish. We're going to say, I'm hoping it's going to be around about the 20% sheen level, which a lot of these satin paints are. They can range between 20 and 40%, can't they? But this, roughly about a 20% sheen level. But the beauty of this is, this paint is one of those paints that is resilient or resistant to finger fat. Do you know what I mean? You know, where you're touching surfaces, particularly that have been water-based, and they start going sticky, start softening up. We call it emulsification. And yeah, this should be resilient to that. Right, let me just read you the description that's on the technical data sheet, just so we know what we're dealing with on this, because it says description: the Touch-Gard is a water-based satin paint with enhanced performance for application to interior trim, woodwork, trim surfaces, especially those where hand contact is frequent. Ooh, matron. Based on a Novel, N-O-V-E-L, Novel. Can you remember Duncan Novel? Can you remember that one? Can you remember what his catchphrase was? Those that are old enough for Duncan Novel, please give some comments below. Right, so this, yeah, probably controversial fella now, isn't he? Anyway. Right, based on Novell pure acrylic binder, Touch-Gard provides exceptional properties. Then it says high resistance to oils and fats that lead softening on high contact areas such as doors and handrails. Excellent adhesion on both previously painted and primed surfaces, and this is where I've got Doris the door, which has got some previously painted surface, and I'm going to go straight over with that primer stroke undercoat, so that's why I'm going to try it out for you. Excellent resistance to common stains. I wonder if that means knots or whether it means tanning. Interesting. Tough and high scuff resistance, which is good. Enhanced application properties, allowing for greater wet edge time. We like that because a lot of people are putting extenders, you know, conditioning. A lot of people are putting conditioning additives into paints, and we don't always want to be doing that. And then it's an exceptionally low odour, which is good. Exceptional blocking resistance, meaning paint surfaces will not stick together once fully cured, which is good, I suppose, if you've got kitchen units and you've got doors shutting on each other, or even just a door in a frame. So I'm quite liking the sound of that, how it's reading. Turnaround time, like the other H&G products, they are about an hour recoat time, which is great. 2 coats required. We're not going to be undercoating, and as I've said, let me just put this down. As I've said, what I'll be doing, this is a door surface on Doris that I did, I can't remember, and I've got a feeling off the back of my mind it's probably the Valspar Trade water-based gloss that I tried. So we're going to take that's had plenty of weeks, months now to cure up. I've given it a nib down, I've given it a dust off, and what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to give it a coat of this Touch-Gard to see how it goes onto it. Once we've given you a little bit of a feel for what the paint's like, I'll come back again, give it another coat for a second coat, let it dry, and then we'll get a bit of a we'll sum it up, see what I think to it. But all in all, I think we're good to go straight over that. So again, you know what I'm like. I've got the Heritage brush from Knorr, and people are saying, where do you get that from? Please speak to Scott at Paint Monster. I've done this brush times many on trying out on the playlist there. It's a lovely brush, it's a lovely bristle, it's a lovely tip on there. I don't think you can see it. And paintmonster.co.uk are the people that sell that. Other good brushes are available elsewhere, but to keep continuity of trying paints out on Doris the Door and Dave the Door, we're keeping with the same brush, so the application's just the same as all the others. Right, I better go on. I just need to get my paint out. Took my coat off, ready to work. Right, let's just quickly, this paint, litre tin, roughly about 35, 36 pounds a litre, which most stuff is nowadays. This is TouchGard. They also do Scuff Guard, which will be another video entirely. That's supposed to be equivalent to Benjamin Moore Scuff X, and again that's the same sort of pricing for a litre. It's roughly around about 35ish pounds a litre. So price wise, it is what it is. I always say paints are expensive. Now again, these paints that Hanford and Green do, I've mentioned on the last few videos, they are the paints that you can use on ceilings, walls, woodwork, doors, the lot. So if you're using the satin finishers, if you're using the gloss finishers, if you're using these touch guards, scuff guards, if you're using the mats, if you're using the soft, I can't remember what was it, soft sheen emulsion, you can use it on walls and woodwork all together. You don't have to swap and change between a wall paint and a woodwork paint. So that said, I'm just bedding my brush in and I'm going to get starting painting. Now the paints, it's not red hot. I've got a bit of heat in here. It looks very white when I've mixed it up and into the kettle. It felt thick in the kettle, but not needing to be thin because it's not something that wants thinning. But a little bit of an ammonia, and I can't even say that. A little bit of an ammonia smell to that, but nothing too pungent that you'd be knocking yourself out. I smell a little bit of fruitiness there as well. A bit like a Wrigley's chewing gum, fruit chewing gum. Not too strong though. Right, let's get going. Right. So far so good, that's feeling not too bad. And this is going over a previously glossed Doris the Door, and all it's had is just a rub down and a dust off. You don't need to put too much on. And don't overwork it and brush it out. So let's get this on now. Knock off the fatty edges. If you're wondering why, I don't know whether you can see it so much, if you're wondering why that's not covered as well as that, when we did the last sampling on this door, I did it in stages to see what it was like with an extra coat on top. So that area there actually had 3 top coats, whereas the lower section only had 2, and that was a section that had only got 1 on it. So that's why we've got a bit of a difference there. I'm just going to bang it on. I'm going to stop talking now. I have to say that does feel nice to apply. That's actually nicer to apply than the high gloss from Hanford and Green as well. I'm going to say that area there that wasn't, the opacity wasn't very good. I've actually gone over it with that now, and to say that's only 1 coat over that very grinny, poor opacity covering paint from last time is actually looking pretty good. that I'd be quite confident to think, hopefully fingers crossed, that when we come to put a second coat over that, the opacity would get a nice coverage. Clearly up there it's going to be fine because we've gone over a solid white gloss, water-based white gloss base, but these areas that aren't so solid around there, the opacity of this seems actually quite good. Right, I'm going to say cheerio, I'm going to get this coated up and I'll come back to you in a little while. Okie dokie, I'm all coated up on that. I must say that actually felt really nice to apply. Off the brush, going on application wise, I'm not saying a dream, but I wasn't struggling with it. And if I am going to compare it to Aqua Guard, I would say I struggle with Aqua Guard. I didn't particularly struggle with that. And now I've been done, well, a few minutes. I'm not seeing anything creeping just at the moment. I'm seeing the first areas just drying off, just going off to a dulled off sheen like you'd expect. Don't forget, a lot of people get confused about thinking that they can get away with one coat. Now, manufacturers always are saying to us, make sure you do the proper process of a 2-coat finish, because that's what they gauge their actual sheen levels on. You can't just go, oh, I'll stick a coat of undercoat on it and then stick a coat of top coat on it and away I've gone. No, you don't want to be doing that. You want to be getting 2 top coats on. It's the same with the glossers. If you put 2 coats of gloss onto a surface, well, I'll say whether it be oil-based or water-based, but particularly with water-based, the 2 layers on themselves make that sheen gloss level pop. I'll say pop. You get a better sheen level from it. No exception when it's exactly the same when we start coming to these satins as well. But all in all, that's gone on nicely. I can see clearly a contrast between where the original opacity of the last paints hadn't covered so well compared to what was a covered area, because that had 3 on it previously. Clearly that's going to be a better surface to go over, and that's hopefully what you'd be going over. If you're just doing a refresh of what's already on a surface, you've rubbed it down, you want 2 coats on, this is what we want, isn't it? We don't always want to be doing an undercoat and then 2 top coats, which a lot of paints are, particularly to get the best performance from. But all in all, that's going off nicely. I want to see what it's like when it's dry. I'm going to leave the heat on in here, because the main thing is what it's like when it dries off. Does it show me any brush marks? Does it show any flashing? Now, if you've seen the video where I'm on that corner where I tried the gloss, it wasn't, it went on all right. I won't say it's the best water-based gloss that I've used, but some people might like it. I wasn't blown away. I'm going to say I wasn't blown away by it. I wasn't blown away by it. The acrylic satin that I tried prior to that, a number of videos back, that was quite nice, but I would call that more of an entry-level water-based acrylic satin finish. I know somebody might argue with me and say, oh, it's not, but I would call that the entry-level. And when you start going on to these TouchGards and Scuff Guards, where they give you a little bit more, I'll say value for money, they cost a little bit more, they're the ones that I would prefer to be using. And if you're saying to me, Phil, which is your normal paints that you go for woodwork, Isomat, Scuff X, because they just give you that little bit better over just a cheap and I say cheap and cheerful, I keep saying paints aren't cheap. So all in all, let's see what it's like when it's dried, when we've got a second coat on, then we'll make the decisions on what the surface is like painted. Hockey docky, as Manuel would say. Now, that's had its first coat, and I'm not going to subject you to actually giving it another coat, painting it, see me doing it, but I just wanted to just give you my first thoughts on that. We're scratch testing with my nails. Yeah, it's not coming away. That's quite a good sign. It means we're not peeling off from that water-based gloss that was on previously. Flow out of the paint, I'd say brush marks, minimal. Finish, it's not bad. If that's a 20%, I'm quite happy with that. Now, I'm a little bit see-throughy on that area there for the opacity, which I'd expect. That where we've got more paint on with the build-up, that's fine. So if you were painting over previously painted sound surfaces that were white, that looks good. Where I am seeing a little bit of oh, let's move the camera up because I'm zooming in, where I'm seeing a little bit of grinning through where I sanded down, I can just see it there. So opacity over something dark isn't there. That's with the first coat. But I'm now going to be giving it a second coat. And let me just drop my camera down. Second coat, let's go a bit wider. I'm going to give it a second coat and we'll see what it's like. Now, I see a couple of misses where I've just got a bit of gloss coming through, but all in all, I'm not really noticing any flashing from bristles catching edges that were going off, because you know we're all about wet edges. So all in all, we're not too bad. I'm going to coat it up last thing today, like now, and I'm going to come back tomorrow, so it's going to have overnight to have dried off. This, I've probably been about 2.5 hours, 3 hours. It's dry about within an hour, but I've just let it harden up. I say harden up, not cure, but just to make it a better surface for me to go over. So yeah, bear with me. I'll see you in the morning, and we'll see what the actual finish is like. And do we like it? Is this the contender that will go against, yeah, Aqua Guard? Maybe. Just before I get into this video, I just want to talk about this opacity coverage, because you know how that door was. We've got multiple paint layers on it, that the underlying surface was actually a solid, particularly that area, a solid white underneath. Now, that section there wasn't. What was the opacity stroke coverage like? That's covered lovely. The only part that's still showing through slightly is where it was rubbed through, and we'd got a little bit of a dark colour showing through. So opacity, not brilliant. Over that section there that we'd got, I'll say grinniness of the underlying surfaces, it's still not 100% coverage. I would say to benefit for an extra coat. There's been fine. I don't want to say brilliant. There's been really good, but where we'd got grinning through of darker colour just there, it's not a full opacity for 2 coats. Whether it would benefit from using the undercoat first and then 2 coats over the top, or whether we'd actually say just go with 3 coats of this, that's your decision. So yeah, a couple of seconds and I'll be into the video. Let's talk about how it's all looking. Right, morning, another day, another dollar. We're coming to look at this now. It's had easily 12 hours to dry off. It's had the second coat, and what do I think of it? Now, we're talking about a paint that we would put against Aqua Guard, so I've been told, because this has got the properties in it that if it's I'll call it a high traffic area, if it's an area of your house, office building or anything like that, that's going to be touched quite frequently, the greases of your hand can transfer onto your paint. Emulsification starts, it softens up that. It's to do with oil and water. Emulsification starts and it softens up and makes your paint go cheesy, and that's what emulsification is. So I'm looking at this. Clearly I'm not going to be putting my hand on it all the time to make it soft. I'm going to take the word of Hanford and Green that that's the properties that this paint has. But I want to know what it's like once it's dried, like I'm looking at it now. Now, I have to say, the flow out of this for the application was a lot better than what I found on the actual acrylic satin. Brush marks where I'm joining up, I'm not noticing it too much there that anything's flashing. I'm looking across this here, everything looks good. We're not overly ropey, and the finish, I won't like to say it's a 20%, it probably might be just a little bit less than that. It's not, and I don't want to be comparing this against Scuff X, and I don't want to be comparing it against the Sickens BL that you can't get anymore. They're the sorts of paints that when you apply, they flow out nicely, that you'd actually look at it and feel it and go, oh, it's like a PVC finish. It's not quite there at a PVC finish. Particularly, it's not like the Sickens BL, which is, if you've seen a playlist video there, it's one of the best water-based paints that you can't get your hands on now. But all in all, the white of that, the application was nice, the brush washed out nicely. I'm actually saying that would be the paint to be using, and forget about using the acrylic satin, the H&G acrylic satin. I would say probably for the difference in cost, £5, we're talking about litre prices, 30 quid or 36 quid a litre. I think you'd go with the 36 quid a litre and have this, because it is that little bit harder paint and resilient to finger grease and things like that. So all in all, I quite like that one. If I've got the choice over the gloss and the acrylic satin and this, clearly I'd be going for this. I prefer satin finishes over the glosses anyway, because as I said on the last video, who does a decent gloss that's actually workable, nice sheen levels, you know, who does a gloss that's actually a decent gloss level and also workable? There's very few. I'm struggling to find one. But all in all, H&G paint, liking that. And I'd say to you, please try it yourself, because my opinion might not be your opinion, but on the whole, that actually applied nicely. It's flowed out nicely, and for a water-based paint that's going to be hard wearing and resilient is the word that I want, for handrails, newel posts and high traffic touching areas, this should be a good one. So please give it a go. Thank you very much again, H&G. No sponsorship, but they did supply me the paint to try out.